I literally almost got an argument about Kwanzaa. Somebody made the comment that made the holiday piss me off.
It's not a made
And then I
up
had to explain to them each day what it represented, all this. I was like, well, in that case, all holidays are made up, aren't they? Like, what? Are you serious? Right. Where's business? Right. It's crazy out there. So, yeah. That's all. I mean, in our holidays here, we're all taking this, you know. Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Okay. Well, thank y'all so much for coming. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
We made it to 2026. We made it past 2025. The 2025 was a good year for y'all? For me, it was a pretty good year. It was okay, kind of, sort of. My first half of 2025 was a little rough. But then my second half was really good. So, but 2026, we're hoping that it's even better. And 2025 wasn't that great. We are claiming that 2026 is going to be better. And 2025 was amazing. We're claiming that 2026 is even more amazing. So we're only looking for good things to happen this year. Anybody do anything special
Oh, thank you.
for the holidays or anything?
No, nothing special.
Is there splendid?
But I
Do I need to get some splendid?
it's always, at least for the most part, always a good year. Because as people say, it's great to be seen rather than viewed.
True. Yeah. It's better to be seen and viewed. We all are alive. We all have made it. There have been some people that didn't even get to 2026. That's really true. Anybody do anything special for the holidays?
Celebrate.
Just
I
celebrate?
don't celebrate.
Yeah, celebrate with family.
I went on a cruise with my family. There were 10 of us.
Okay.
So like my college grandchildren and their friends. And
Yeah.
then, you know, like, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It really was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So the Bahamas.
I did too. I went on a cruise to the Bahamas with family. That was our first time ever getting all of us together. Yeah, so we all
Yeah, it was cool.
getting everybody on the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Whether you did something big or if it was just you or your family or friends, or sometimes you just get a solo time where you kind of need to get away. I had to do that for a little bit during the holidays as well. So sometimes you just need to get away and just reflect. But welcome to 2026. Y'all made it. So we give yourselves a hand for that, for sure. So as we know, this has been the holiday season, and most people are celebrating Christmas, or most people celebrated Christmas. Some people celebrated Thanksgiving, and you have Christmas, and you have the holidays, and also you have other holidays that are also celebrated during this time. You have Hanukkah, which is celebrated during this time, and other holidays. And all of these things are, many of these things are beautiful, right? Where the point may not necessarily be whatever story, but the true or mythical around the story. Well, hopefully it's a time where we get to come together and be with family and be with friends and, show people that we care and have dinner with loved ones and these types of things. That's really the point of many of these holidays. Again, whether the stories around them, and as we know, as we get older, we know a lot of these stories are made up. A lot of these stories are mythical, or they're exaggerations of maybe something that may have happened, but there's exaggerations around it. So that's what a lot of these holidays are about. When you talk about Easter or Valentine's Day or the 4th of July, like anything, all of these holidays have stories around them. But a lot of people may or may not know that there is an African American holiday, or there is a holiday that is geared towards people of African descent, right? That we often celebrate during this time, right? And it's called Kwanzaa. And over the years, Kwanzaa has been more popular because people have been talking about it in mainstream. Sometimes you may see it on cartoons or Sesame Street or something like that. So kids are sometimes kind of, they may know it or they may see it, but they may not know everything about it, right? And I remember actually one of the things that made me do this was my nephew called me a couple of weeks ago. And he said he'll probably be coming in here soon. My mom is supposed to drop him off and call me. And he said, Uncle John, what is Kwanzaa? Can you tell me about Kwanzaa? And it was random. It was like 10 o'clock one day. And I was like, you supposed to be in school. but he just randomly called me. And so I told him about Kwanzaa and the different, the history of it and why people celebrate it and the principles around Kwanzaa, right? And so he was like, oh, okay, thank you. He said, well, my teacher told me that we could be elves in school. Like everybody could be a different elf. And the elves stood for whatever holiday they wanted to celebrate. So most kids were becoming Christmas elves. They dressed up like a Christmas elf. And he said, well, I wanted to be a Kwanzaa elf, right? And the elf just meant you dressed up in accordance to whatever holiday you wanted to celebrate. And he said, I wanted to be a Kwanzaa elf. And I was like, really? And so it was just interesting. And over the years, I kind of talked about it with my daughter and with my family members. I didn't know he's like 6 years old. So I didn't know he was really paying attention. But I realized, oh man, these kids are really listening and they're paying attention. And they may not know everything, but they're very curious. And so I thought it would be good to talk about this even more comprehensively, because over the years, when I started celebrating Kwanzaa, maybe about 10 to 15 years ago, there was a lot of people that were big on me about celebrating, and they would say, why are you celebrating a fake holiday? This holiday is fake and it's made up and don't nobody know nothing about this and this and the third. And I was like, Christmas is a fake holiday.
Yes.
You know that, right? Christmas is a fake. The 4th of July, they didn't sign the Independence Day of America, not the 4th of July. It's like July 2nd, right? So you know that's fake too, right? Like all of these holidays are fake. Somebody came up with them and we started to celebrate them for whatever reason. And it's these principles around some of these holidays that make them special to certain people, right? And so I just, I thought it would be interesting to discuss it and talk about it. And some of you may already be familiar a lot with Kwanzaa. And then there may be some things that we may talk about that you may not be familiar with, right? And doing. And so I thought it'd be good just to talk about it. And typically what I would do with lectures is I would probably just dispense a lot of information and we may have discussions and talk about certain parts. But this is probably going to be more discussion and less me talking, because these principles are really just things for us to reflect on. So for the first half, I'll give you some information on Kwanzaa. And then for the rest of the time, however long we go, whether we go all the way to 3 or not, we're just going to kind of reflect on this past year and talk about some ways in which we can improve our communities this year using some of these principles. So that's how we're going to roll today. With that being said, I always like to start, for anybody who's new to the class, I always like to start telling you what this class is about, why we started, and essentially kind of like the framing of it. So when I say the People's African History class, what I mean is that this is a class that is for us, by us. It is by the people, it's for the people. It is directed towards people of African descent. And we talk about history in general. We talk about how people of African descent have impacted and been impacted by history as a whole. So we try to be as comprehensive as possible, and we try to tell our story from an African-centered perspective. We do this through discussion and through sharing of knowledge. So this is a collective learning process. If there's something that I missed that you may know, maybe things that you may have heard or may have read, feel free to talk about it. Feel free to say, hey, actually, I remember I learned this, or I read this, or I was taught this. And, we have other professors, my brother in the back, who's a professor as well. He has a lot of information. He'll always add in and supplement. And that's what this is about, because this is a collective learning process. We're all learning from each other. The purpose of this knowledge is to uplift all Black people, not a certain type, not people from a certain ethnicity or class or sex or anything like that. We're here to uplift us all. So again, feel free to add to the discussion. I talk about African history because I do believe that we all are African people. We all came from Africa. So we are all African people, regardless of if we identify as African American or Afro-Brazilian or Caribbean or whatever. We are all of African descent. And so that's why this is comprehensive. Obviously, a large part of the class does deal with African American history because we are all within the we are all experiencing race and our livelihood within the U.S. context. So we do talk a lot about African American history, but we also add in history of African people from all over the world. And I've had people ask me early on, hey, how can I support or donate or anything? I was trying to put the Cash App up just in case you want to send something to help me, I don't know, buy more equipment. I actually need a lapel mic. And sometimes I be trying to use my notes and I'd be all over the place. So people was on the live saying, you need a lapel. So I said, what do I do? So, anything you want to do to help and expand what we're doing here at Ashe Institute, and expand what we're doing here with the People's African History class, we greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to sign the sign-in sheet so I can send you reminders of when we're having the class and what we're going to be talking about. I send information. Sometimes I'll send like a little write-up of what we're going to be discussing, what we're going to be talking about, if you can make it or if you can't. But again, I like to send a reminder so that you can say, oh yeah, that's right, this is happening this Saturday. Let me come and let me bring a friend and, kind of thing. So, and also I always like to say as well, if you can't be here in person, we prefer for you to be here in person, but if you can't, you can always go on live, go on our YouTube and subscribe. And I'm just now learning how to do the whole live thing. So come on live and if you just at home or you're at work and you want to listen, you can always do that or if you're out of town or something like that. Okay? Very good. So always start with a review from last time, whatever we talked about in the last class. And the last time we were here, we talked about the transatlantic slave trade. So we talked about that, I think, the last few times we were here. We talked about the transatlantic slave trade. And so we were discussing the Middle Passage, and we were discussing how and why African people were kidnapped from the western part and the southern parts of the African continent, how they were brought over here. We talked about the slave castles in Ghana. We talked about what they were traded for. We talked about the investment that enslaved people had in this country and how the investment in enslaved people was the highest return on any investment that the U.S. history has ever made. They still are making money and they're still benefiting billions and billions and probably trillions of dollars off of what was done through the transatlantic slave trade. So there's no amount of money that we can really assess to know exactly how much we were really worth and all of the financial backing that African people brought to this country as well as Europe. What we oftentimes call the Middle Passage, or not even just the Middle Passage, but the kidnapping of African people, the trading, the journey to the coast, and then that journey from the coast to the Caribbean and to the Americas, we call that entire event the Ma'afa, right? And the Ma'afa just means the great disaster, the great tragedy, or sometimes called the African Holocaust. And so again, this refers to that entire period, that entire transatlantic slave trade, and the middle part of that journey is what we call the Middle Passage. Then we talked about why it was important to speak out about the revolts, because we didn't just talk about the kidnapping, we didn't just talk about the event itself and the tragedy, but we also talked about the revolts. And why did we discuss the revolts and the revolutions that happened either before or on those slave ships? Why is that important?
Because it's important because many blacks think that we were passive and didn't fight back.
Yeah.
So it's important to know about the resistance.
Sure.
And if you had to give your own life, you did that.
Yes.
For the sake of the struggle.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So like in Haiti, on the ships, across Brazil, Cuba, these uprisings happen as a sign that says, we're not just going to lay down and take this. We're not going to lay down and take this. So like when slaves came to the Igbo landing in Georgia from Nigeria, they walked into the sea and they all drowned.
Yes.
As a source of inspiration to those that they left behind. It also spoke to the ancestors were joining you. And so it was a statement as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely,
You know
absolutely.
what I'm saying?
Yes. Anybody else? Why is it important to talk about the revolts and revolutions and the resistance on these slave ships? Yes.
So it doesn't repeat.
So there's a repeat, absolutely, because and a majority of these revolts were not successful, but some of them were successful. And when they were successful, oftentimes what they would do is they would leave somebody alive. And why do you think they would leave at least one person alive after they had killed off everybody on the ship? Go back and tell them, this ain't gonna happen again. You better go get somebody else, but don't come over here, right? And so again, it's to let people know, like, we don't want this to happen, right? So it was definitely important for us to talk about revolts. And if an enslaved man lived, he was regarded as seasoned. So we talked about the seasoning process as well in the Caribbean, right? Talked about the Caribbean seasoning process and why the slavery in the Caribbean was in some ways way more horrific than it was in the U.S. South, right? Many of those enslaved people didn't even last 3 years. Many of them didn't survive. Many African Americans, we can trace, if we're lucky, we can trace our history through some generations of slavery, but many of the people in the Caribbean can't because they died so fast because of such horrific conditions that they were living under. And in the Caribbean, they would actually rather buy a new enslaved person than to just put two together and make another one. In America, they actually prefer, because it was more expensive in America to purchase an enslaved person. They would say, look, we just want to purchase a man and a woman and then just have them have babies. And so we can just have free ones, right? So different context in the Caribbean than it was in the Americas. So with that being said, we're going to go into today, which we're going to talk about Kwanzaa. And our takeaway, I always try to start with the takeaway because I know sometimes people have to leave. So if you want to take a picture or just something that I want you to remember as we go into this lecture. Kwanzaa is a 7-day festival beginning on December 26th. It was created in 1966, and it is one of the most lasting innovations of U.S. Black nationalism in the 1960s. And it was very popular in California, actually, at first, and then all over the United States, and now it is becoming more popular in Canada and the Caribbean and elsewhere. Kwanzaa is celebrated in the United States, and it is designed to resemble the African Harvest Festival, which is, and I'll give you the name of it in a few slides, but part of that name is Kwanzaa. And basically it means first fruits. Has anybody ever, how many of y'all grew up in the church? Right? So in the church, sometimes you're taught when you get money, what is the first thing you do with your money? You tithe, right? You pay 10% to God, 10% to the church or whatever your religion tells you. And so Kwanzaa is kind of like your first fruits, your tithing. You give of your first back to the people, back to the ancestors, back to the spirits. Kwanzaa is your first fruits. And so that's kind of what it symbolizes or celebrates. And so as we come into the new year, this is the first thing that we do, right? This is the first thing that we give. We give to our community, we give to God, we give to ourselves, and we reflect before we start in the new year with whatever our resolutions are or our goals or whatever it is we're trying to accomplish in the new year. This is the first. Kwanzaa is significant both because of its popularity and it retells the African American story, right? How many of you have ever heard of the Passover in the Jewish tradition? Right? What is the Passover in Jewish tradition?
Reflection.
It's a reflection.
Yeah. Reflect
What are they reflecting in the Passover?
the history.
Mm-hmm. The history of how the Hebrews came from being enslaved, the story of them being enslaved in Egypt and coming and being free, right, from their oppressors. And in the Passover, they retell this story every Passover so that they don't forget. Kwanzaa is the same thing. Kwanzaa is the same thing in our tradition, in the African American tradition. It is the retelling of the story of African and African American people so that our children don't forget. It's the first thing we do. That's why it's at the end of the year and going into the beginning of the next year, so that we start off the year knowing who we are and knowing where we come from. Let's see. Oh, it retells the African American story with the distant African rural past elevated to the point of origin. It is even more significant as a cultural event where African American racial identity is formed. The first day of the first Kwanzaa is celebrated in Los Angeles under the direction of Maulana Karenga. We're going to talk more about him, who was the chair of the Black Studies Department at Cal State University. And again, it is a 7-day holiday. So from December 26th all the way to January 1st, every day we celebrate a new principle that we talk about for Kwanzaa. And at the end of today, we're going to light, even though it's for January 3rd, so technically it's over. But we'll still light the Kwanzaa candles. So for those who may not be familiar, you know exactly how it's done for at the end of this year. This was designed by Dr. Karenga as a celebration of African American family, community, and culture from the post-civil rights era. So this is the main thing that I want you to take away from this topic. With that being said, we talked about this during the Black August lecture. Was anybody here when we talked about Black August? You were here? Okay. So we talked about this during the Black August lecture, but I thought that this would be good to talk about again, because this kind of sets the stage for how we discuss and talk about Kwanzaa, because it is through this that Kwanzaa actually starts. So before I get into this topic, what's the most important, significant uprising or rebellion that has happened in your life? What's up, Eddie? What was the most significant uprising or rebellion that has happened in your life?
Black Lives Matter protest after George Floyd was killed.
Sure, George Floyd protest. Definitely younger people. If you're younger, that might be the first or the most significant, right? And recently happened in 2020. So the George Floyd protest, the Black Lives Matter protest, and that was kind of the culmination of a whole decade of protests, all the way from Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and everything that was happening in the 2010s. So yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? What other uprisings can you think of, or maybe revolts that maybe you can remember in your life?
The full counter rebellion downtown Jackson.
I don't know about that one.
You have more?
Ex-hop.
Oh, Alexander.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes here. Okay. Alexander, that was a big one, especially particularly in the city of Jacksonville.
No kings.
No Kings, more recently. That was huge, right? So many No Kings protests happened in
They're still
the
going.
last couple of weeks. It's still going
They're still
on.
going.
Still going on. Anybody else?
I'm from the civil rights era,
Mhm.
so like the March on Washington
Oh, yeah.
and the
Vietnam.
Selma to Montgomery.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me was significant.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. No, those were a part of that long tradition, and some of the more historical ones when you think about protests and revolts and revolutions. I know for me, it was probably the first major one that I went to was one in Sanford right after Trayvon Martin was murdered. And there was a big protest out in Sanford that we went to. I think it was like 2012 or 13. And I came down for that one. And that one I think was really significant for me because it kind of secured my dedication to activism. Right?
Yeah.
So that one was very important. So I think all of us have some in our lives, some type of rebellion. That's why it's necessary, because oftentimes it is these rebellions and acts of resistance that kind of move us in that direction. So in 1965, there was a major rebellion that happened in the city of Los Angeles, in the Watts area of Los Angeles. And so with the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, there was a lot of race relations that happened that seemed to be headed in the right direction. And so And part of this was a federal law that included California that created Proposition 14. And Proposition 14 was moved to block the fair housing section of the act, of the Civil Rights Act. And the fair housing section basically just said that it would be unlawful for you to not allow somebody to have housing based on the color of their skin or their sex, gender, whatever. Yes. Yes. Proposition 14. Mhm. And so this created anger and a feeling of injustice in the inner cities because this Proposition 14 they were trying to push forward so that it could block that part of the Civil Rights Act. So Black people were very upset at the time. And so when we talk about the Watts uprising, some people call it the Watts riots. Some people say that we should call it the Watts uprising because oftentimes when people think of riots, what do we think about?
Looting.
Think about looting. Think about stealing TVs. People just get mad. They mad, they bored, they don't want to work, so they just find a reason to mess things up, right? And so that's what we think about when we think about riots. But it wasn't that. It wasn't that people didn't want to work, or it wasn't that people wanted to find free stuff. This was because there were acts of injustice that was happening to the people in Los Angeles and in all of California. And there was something that literally just broke the camel's back and caused people to get angry. And so these events should be called the Los Angeles Rebellion because it recognizes the voices and the agency of the people that were involved in the resistance. So the rebellion occurred in Black Los Angeles. And essentially what I'm getting ready to tell you, the story of what happened was really just the straw that broke the camel's back. There was a gentleman by the name of Marquette Fry. He was a 21-year-old Black man, and he was with his brother. I think he was coming from a party. And he was arrested for drunk driving. They said that when they pulled him, the car was swerving. When they pulled him over, gave him the breathalyzer test, and they said that he had alcohol on his breath. And so they said he was drunk driving. They told him to get out of the car. And what some people say, the police report said that he was resisting arrest, right? That's what they always say. They said he was resisting arrest. But what ended up happening was more people kind of started coming out to see in the neighborhood to see what's going on and why is there such a ruckus. And all of a sudden, an officer struck Marquette on the head. And when he struck Marquette on the head with the nightstick, then he was arrested, and his mother was arrested as well, and his brother, because his mother came out to see what was going on. He was very close to home. So his mother came out to see what was going on. So by the time the Fries were finally arrested, hundreds of people by this time had came on the scene and were upset and they were angry. And so rumors started to spread quickly through the Black community, and residents got upset and they started throwing stones at the police cars. They were throwing stones at the police cars, and they started to beat up different people that were in the area, particularly white people, because they were so angry at what was happening. Now, this was not the first time, particularly Los Angeles was a hotbed for police brutality, right? As we know, if you know anything about hip hop, 20, 30 years later, eventually NWA would come out with a hip hop record called F the Police. And then shortly after, there would be the LA riots, which stemmed from police brutality. So police brutality and police violence in predominantly Black neighborhoods in Los Angeles was not new. And so the crowd got angrier and angrier because they were just tired of seeing Black folks being beat up by police. And so they just resisted and started to take out their anger in a more violent way. And so as the crowd got angrier about the scene, they arrived and used batons. The police officers arrived and used shotguns to keep people back and to keep the crowd back from the police cars. And after this time, hundreds and hundreds of more people ended up coming out, and it began this so-called riot that resumed. All day Friday, the riots continued to intensify, and it got so big within a day or two that Dr. King, who I believe was in Puerto Rico on vacation, he got word of it. And so he had to cut his vacation short and come back to the States to help deal with this so-called riot. When Dr. King arrived back on Tuesday, the riots were pretty much over. And what Dr. King, he famously said that while many of the white media wanted him to take on the defense of the police officers, he actually said that while he did not agree with using violence to get our point across, as we know Dr. King was a very nonviolent man, he also understood that riots are the language of the unheard. That's what he said in response to the Watts uprising, that riots are the language of the unheard. And when you continue to ignore the grievances, and when you continue to ignore what it is that people need and continue to ignore injustice, people are going to stop trying to be nice. People are going to stop signing petitions. People are going to stop, asking. And at some point, anger is going to happen, and you're going to have to expect some level of violence, right? And so that's what he says in response to this. So the police commissioner started calling these citizens monkeys. He called them monkeys in the zoo, or rioters, in response to what was happening here in Watts.
Did he go to LA or did he stay?
I don't think he came to LA. I think he came back in and made that statement, but he wasn't actually in LA. Let's see. And then there are other things that occurred during this uprising that oftentimes gets overlooked. As we know, during the 1960s, the Nation of Islam was a very powerful, had a very powerful position in the Black community, specifically in Los Angeles. They're very influential. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad and many of his ministers were very influential in Los Angeles. And so many of the police officers believed that they were behind this riot, and that their teachings were the cause of Black people feeling that it was okay to do this. And so they actually blew up a mosque in the area, right? Just to send a message to the Black community to say, we're not going to have this. 2 motorcycle police attempted to leave the area after they shot up and blew up a mosque, a Nation of Islam mosque. The police stopped to pursue a woman who they thought was also involved in a lot of these incidents. And so the crowd came down on her. Several other officers did. And then the 2 police officers found this woman. They arrested her. They spit on her. She tried to resist, and they drug her out of the crowd. And it was later said that this woman was actually pregnant. This woman that they did all these things to, right? So there was a lot of issues and a lot of things that were happening during this time, during this so-called riot, this uprising. So eventually the community called a meeting. Miss Fry was brought out of jail. The community called a meeting, and the meeting kind of dealt with the complaints and the issues that Black people had, and with Los Angeles and California at large. And they did a study and an investigation on why these things were happening. And what they ended up finding was that the economic deprivation and the social isolation and inadequate housing and the despair that many people they call Negroes at the time, that African Americans were dealing with in the northern and western ghettos, were really the reason why they felt this violence was an expression of what was going on in their communities. And so with this particular uprising was not an isolated event, but other events started to occur in and around the area. There were uprisings in Chicago and Harlem and other places in the 1960s, and particularly one significant one in Detroit shortly after Dr. King was murdered. And so again, the 1960s was just this time period where Black people were trying to figure out, how do we get the justice? How do we get the things that we have been fighting for so long? If we do it by violence, we're shut down. If we do it by nonviolence, you kill Dr. King, and you kill other civil rights leaders like Medgar Evers, etc. So we were really trying to figure out, what do we do? Many of us were in a state of not understanding, trying to understand who we are and trying to understand how we move forward within an American context. And with that being said, this is where we get to Dr. Maulana Kareem. Dr. Maulana Karenga was born July 14, 1941 in Maryland. He is an American activist, a scholar, and an author. I forgot to put a picture of him, but you can Google a picture of Dr. Karenga. Eventually, he moved to Los Angeles and he went there to stay with his brother named Chester. And Dr. Karenga is a former Black activist, and he was deeply disturbed by the devastation that occurred during the Watts riots. So it was after the Watts riots that Dr. Karenga looked out at the communities, looked out at what was happening with our people, looked at how we were fighting, looked at our despair, looked at our anger, and said there has to be something that we can do, right? Something that we can do, talk about, discuss. There has to be something to help get our communities back together, because in the midst of also fighting against the oppressors and fighting against people that were perpetuating this injustice against us, we were also fighting against ourselves. I don't like the way you're fighting for justice. I don't like the way you're doing it. I think you're making it worse. I think you're making it worse, and we're making it better. And also, there were FBI programs that were pitting us against each other. Is anybody familiar with COINTELPRO?
Yeah.
What was COINTELPRO?
Yeah. COINTELPRO was a program established by the J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI, that targeted Black leadership.
Yes, absolutely. And so it was these programs that targeted and made up letters and made up quotes and made up things that said, oh, well, Dr. King said this about the Panthers. And so the Panthers would then reply to Dr. King, and the civil rights leaders were saying, well, we never said that. And oh, the Nation of Islam is saying this about us, and us said this about the nation. And so there was all of these ways in which we were being pitted against each other, right, and divided. And so there was so much division, not only between communities, but also within ourselves, that Dr. Karenga is saying there has to be a way in which we can bring us closer together. And so at a young age, he became the first African-American to serve as the college student body president. He eventually attended UCLA and got a degree in political science, a master's degree in political science, and then he became a student of Malcolm X. So he became a Black Power advocate, and he studied under the teachings of Malcolm X. And after the Watts riots, he left his doctoral program and he joined the Black Power movement. And it was during this movement that he started to understand and learn. Well, that's when he changed his name to Maulana Karenga, which is a Swahili name. And that's when he started doing and understanding more things about his original African heritage. He began to read more books on his original African heritage, African customs, and things that we did before we were forced over here into the United States. And so Karenga eventually founded an organization called US, and it was this organization very similar to the Panthers, the People's Party, and several other parties that came up during this time. It was another organization, and the whole purpose of it was to encourage cultural and social change through Black unity. And so he decided to develop these ideas after learning more and more about our history. After this Watts riots, these Watts uprisings, he said we have to find something to bring us together. And so it inspired him to look at African harvest celebrations. He started to study African harvest celebrations and said, maybe we can create a celebration for us that brings us together. And he decided to develop it and make it a non-religious holiday. Why do you think he wanted to make it a non-religious holiday?
Because some religions probably would participate if they had to do it in another religion.
Religion is one of the things that divides us so much. Divides us so much, not just between Black and white and Asian and Hispanic, but within the Black community. Right? Christians may say, oh, they don't believe in Jesus. I don't know if I want to worship with them, but they don't believe in Allah. I don't want to do this with them. And it's like, that's personal, right? The issues in our community affect all of us. Yeah. It don't matter what religion you are, right? And police ain't gonna pull you over and say, wait, are you a Christian? Okay, I'm not gonna beat you up, right? No, these things are affecting all of us. When they took history out of our schools, They took it out of all the schools. It didn't just matter what religion you are. And so oftentimes religion can divide us. Because religion is so important to us as African people. It's very important because sometimes it's all we got, right? And so it's important to us, but it shouldn't be used to divide us and divide who we are, right? And so Dr. Karinga said, I'm going to make this a non-religious holiday because Christmas is largely centered around Christian ideas, right? Passover is largely around Christian ideas, right? And our Jewish ideas, or religious ideas. And so he wanted to make it non-religious so that it could be inclusive. Say anybody can participate, no matter who you believe in or what you do or don't believe in. You can participate in this because this is about culture. It's not about who you pray to, right? And so this is where the idea of Kwanzaa came about. And Dr. Karinga put this out to bring us back together after the Watts uprisings because we were so divided. And he said, well, one thing Black folks like to do, we like to celebrate. Yeah, we like to get together, we like to eat, we like to listen to music, we like to party, we like to give gifts. How can we come together and how can we have some semblance of unity within our community after these riots or after this uprising? And so Dr. Karinga combined aspects of different harvest celebrations, the Ashanti Nation, the Zulu Nation, and this formed the basis of the celebration of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is derived from the phrase Matunda ya Kwanzaa, which means first fruits in Swahili. Right? We talked about how Kwanzaa is very similar to tithing. It's just about giving first, giving back to God first, giving back to our communities first at the beginning of the year before we go into everything else that we're going to do for the year. And so how Kwanzaa works is on the first night, which is December 26th, we light a candle, right? Typically, we light the candle, the black candle first. Umoja, we'll talk about all that in a second. But we light a candle, the family comes together, and the child lights the candle on what we call a kanara. This is called a kanara. And on the kanara, we light the candle, and then we talk about whatever principle is associated with that candle. And so the principles of the Kwanzaa, is called the Nguzo Saba. And the Nguzo Saba are just values of African culture that contribute to building and reinforcing community among African Americans, right? Then at the end, on December 31st, on the first day, I think sometimes it's on December 31st, sometimes people do it on the 1st of January, they have an African feast. And that African feast is called the Karamu. And I said, when I get a bigger house, I want to have me a Karamu and have people come over and everybody bring food because I'm going to cook for everybody. And everybody have a good time. But they always look like so much fun every time I go to one. I see people have Karamu. I say, what y'all doing? Yeah, make it pop up. All y'all gonna make something and bring it. Did you have to have it?
I did. My paper was to invite me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll do it one day. But yes, on the last day, typically you have a Kwanzaa, it's a big feast, and everybody celebrate and bring in the new year together. And so while working within the Black Power movement, Dr. Karinga, the US organization, eventually came into conflict with, again, other groups, particularly the Black Panther Party. And so they started to disagree over ideology, methods, again, these ways in which we have seen and we will see as we continue with these lectures and these classes, we'll continue to see how division oftentimes within our communities has been some of our downfalls. Wow. Us arguing amongst each other. And so that's why it's very important for us to sometimes put aside our personal differences and say, hey, what do we agree on? And how can we take what we do agree on and move forward?
And also, we have to take note of the sabotage.
Yes.
That goes on for those things to happen, the success happens.
Absolutely. So right after we have this Kwanzaa, the creation of this Kwanzaa holiday, then all of a sudden, again, there is sabotage. There are outside forces, right? Not only outside forces, but using one or two people inside to try to sabotage and try to break us up. So these are things that we have to constantly be on the lookout for. This also came to the attention of the FBI, which manipulated Black power groups in an effort to keep them divided as part of the counterintelligence program COINTELPRO that we were just talking about earlier. So wanted to make sure we kind of talked about that. One of the things I want to do is, and these are just some images of the Kwanzaa candle being lit. Also, Karamu. Sometimes it's on Karamu, sometimes it's on other days of Kwanzaa, depending on what city you live in. They'll have celebrations. So they'll have a Kuji Chakalia celebration, and they'll have a Ujima celebration. And children will come out from different organizations, and they'll do dances, and they'll have drum circles, and they'll have all types of celebrations to showcase African and African American culture. Yes.
Is this an appropriate time I can make a comment about faith?
Sure, because one of the things I do want to talk about too, I don't know if you're going to go into this, but there are also some reasons why some people don't celebrate Kwanzaa and some issues that people have with my Ranga. And you know me, I want to tell the truth, right? We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we're going to tell the truth and what people perceive as the truth. Yes.
Okay, so I have a little pushback on something you said very beginning of the conversation, a slight pushback. You were saying that there are those who see Kwanzaa as fake because they look at it as being manufactured. And you rightly pointed out that all holidays, Christmas, Easter, all these things are manufactured. But where I have a slight pushback with your interpretation of what other people are saying is because I think that the people who are critics of Kwanzaa, some right-wing white groups, and some black groups too, the Adolf movement, their critique when they say faith is not how you presented faith as it's manufactured, but what they're talking about is they believe that Kwanzaa was created in wrong application to Black people in the United States. And what they are trying to do is they're trying to say that Kwanzaa is African, and these Black people in the United States are not. So why should they be celebrating something that they're not? But the whole idea is to get African people living in the United States to not see themselves as African. So therefore, critiques of Kwanzaa come like critiquing the principles of the South. But why is it that they want to use Kiswahili? That's fake for them to use Swahili when they supposedly came from just West Africa, not taking into consideration that Dr. Karanga was talking about using Swahili as an African holiday of a language that connected all African people, regardless of where the diaspora, anywhere on the continent, period. And so I just wanted to point that out because that is the goal of the critique of Kwanzaa, to get Black people, African people in the United States not to see themselves as Africans. So I just wanted to throw that. It's a minor.
I think that's a very good point. I actually never thought about it like that, but because I've always looked at it as a critique of just the holiday itself, never as a critique of why are African Americans connecting themselves to something that is African and they're not African. So that's actually a really good point. I never looked at it that way. But I can see how some people may have a problem, right? Like, yeah, you can celebrate Black History Month because that's your history. But why are you celebrating something that is connecting you to Africa? And that is a problem that some people have. So that's actually a really good point. Again, something else you said that I wanted to make sure I reiterated, and that is that Kwanzaa doesn't come from one specific African cultural tradition. It's a mixture. So even when you talk about Swahili, it's a mixture of West African traditions, but Swahili was largely created in East Africa, right? So again, when people try to make that connection, or be specific with that connection, I think what Dr. Karinga was trying to do was trying to be as Pan-African as possible and say, hey, we can pull from, because we all came from various parts of the continent. And so as we're continuing to learn who we are and where we're from, we're pulling from various parts of this continent to help celebrate who we are and bridge this African American holiday with these African roots, which again I think is very important because Kwanzaa is, some people think Kwanzaa is an African holiday, and it is an African American holiday with African roots. So I think that's important. Karenga formed this doctrine again, this that he used for the organization called Kawaida. And one aspect of Kawaida was again a value system for the group, us organization, as well as for all people of African heritage. And again, this is called the Nguzo Saba, which in Swahili, it just means the second principle, right? That's what the Nguzo Saba means. And the principles, and we're going to talk about each of these principles, and this is where we're going to do some reflection ourselves. We're going to talk about each one of these. And so the principles are Umoja, which is unity, right? So that's the first principle of Kwanzaa. Kuji Chakalia, which is self-determination, is the second principle. The third principle is Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. The fourth one is Ujama, or Ujima, sometimes it's pronounced as Ujima, is cooperative economics. Fourth one, the fifth one is Mia, which is purpose. The sixth one is Kaumba, which is creativity. That one is my personal favorite. Kaumba, which is creativity. And then the last one is Imani, which means faith. And so we're going to talk about each of these, and we're going to reflect on each of these today. And these are the 7 principles that make up the holiday or the celebration of Kwanzaa. So a couple things about Maulana Karenga before we get into the principles. Karenga in 1971 was eventually convicted of assault and false imprisonment. Some people say false imprisonment, after being charged the previous year with having tortured 2 female members of the US organization, right? As we are, when we talk about our Black organizations, and some of them have been very uplifting, some have been very uplifting to our women, some of them have not, right? There have been issues with women in the civil rights movement, there were issues with women in the Black Panther Party, issues with women in the Christian church, and issues with women in the US organization, right? And not issues blaming things on women, but things happening to women, right? So it's important when we talk about these things, talk about the racism and the sexism as well that oftentimes occurs even within our communities. And so, again, I don't think there was any evidence to prove this. So he was sentenced to up to 10 years for the crime. He denied the charges and he claimed that it was politically motivated, and he was eventually released on parole in 1975. So he didn't end up serving his entire time. But this is one of the critiques that people have had about Dr. Karenga, right? Was him being charged with mistreatment and torturing female members of the US organization. After he got out of prison, he earned a PhD in political science in 1976 with an emphasis on nationalism and theory. He eventually earned another PhD in social ethics at the University of Southern California on classical African ethics in ancient Egypt. And his dissertation was on the Ma'at and the moral ideal in ancient Egypt, looking at classical African ethics. He published that in 2004. Dr. Karenga taught a number of African and African American studies courses. He was an associate professor, a lecturer, a visiting scholar, and eventually in 1989, he became the chair of the Black Studies Department at Cal State University. Some people also argue that Dr. Karenga, some people believe that he was an informant. So that's something that I think is important to discuss and to talk about. Again, we don't know if it's true or not, but that has been something that has been stated and one of the issues that some people have had with Dr. Karenga and Kwanzaa itself. So I just think it's important to talk about.
Yeah, so according to some of the FBI files, FBI time saw Dr. Karenga as very, very dangerous. Even more dangerous than the Black Panthers. So, though the US organization did not promote militancy, but the reason is that they said that Dr. Karenga was somebody that, if his ideas caught on, could turn the tide of the way Black people thought about themselves and toward the society overall. So I think this gentleman right here, right, mentioned about the COINTELPRO program. All those things were a part of it, and I just wanted to point out that that the critique of the US organization that you mentioned was also part of that. And one of the things that the Panthers disagreed with Dr. Karenga on is that Dr. Karenga asked that he and the US organization be part of the cultural wing of the Black Panther organization. But they rejected that because they made fun of the US organization because they said, hey, look, the Black Panthers were saying that Black people need to be out in the streets using weapons to fight against police brutality. They made fun of the US organization, saying the US organization promoted Swahili. Say, you foolish Black people, how can Swahili defend you against bullets? And that wasn't the thing that Dr. Karenga was saying. He was talking about going back to your language roots and everything so you can reorganize your mind so that you can use strategies to get from underneath white supremacy as opposed to necessarily physical violence. But those wedges that you mentioned about various Black organizations not being able to get along were seized upon by the government, by the COINTELPRO program, to create various wedges in these mixes. So I just wanted to point that out because again, the goal in the attack of Dr. Karenga, Kwanzaa, the US organization is get people here not to see that they're African because that connects you on a global basis rather than fighting white supremacy locally.
Yeah, that was actually one of the critiques that a lot of people had about the Black Panther Party. I think even Angela Davis herself critiqued the Black Panther Party for not, quote unquote, being African enough or including African principles in a lot of their strategies, right? The book that they promoted was Mao's Red Book, right? Mao Zedong's Red Book. And they're like, well, why are we reading this Chinese guy's book? You know, I mean, yeah, it's cool and this is important, but there's plenty of African people that we could be reading. We don't have to be reading this Chinese guy. So yes, that was definitely one of the critiques that many people had about the Black Panther Party. And if we look at it, we would really need both. We would need the strength and the defense of the Black Panther Party, as well as the African cultural knowledge that the US organization brought forward to help advance us as a people, right? You got your hand raised now? Okay.
Would you say that a lot of this was distraction, was to throw us off course? Sometimes we have a problem with staying focused on the issue at hand. And sometimes we get so caught up in, like you said before, in our own bickering back and forth until we lose focus. And then next thing you know, nothing has progressed. There was no progression. All of this happened, but where's the real progression? So how do we, even in today, when we're fighting against the system, how do we stay focused? How do we remain focused on the issue at hand as a people to really get some traction and get things done?
That's a really good point. I want to also talk about how that idea of staying focused on what the problem is, right? Some of you in here may be married or at least have been in a relationship, and you can tell me if you've ever been in a situation with a significant other when you're arguing or you're at odds with your significant other, and you're mad about this, and he or she is mad about this, and y'all going back and forth, and then you start to realize, wait a minute. We're not even really arguing about what we was originally supposed to be arguing about. I was mad that you had your shoes out in the middle of the floor, and now we talking about we didn't go on vacation last year, and what that got to do with anything, right? But why is it that sometimes we lose focus on when we're arguing, not only with our significant other, but even among whole communities, right? How do we lose focus? And how do we regain that focus?
We have never spoken with one voice. We are not a monolithic community. And it started when we came from Africa. There were many tribes, many languages, many people from different countries who spoke differently. You know, so we arrived to this country with all kinds of issues.
Right.
So I don't think we have ever been focused to that extent in our history. There was backlash when Martin Luther King was marching. Some people were on board, a lot of people were not.
Right.
And that amazed him, you know, because the one central issue was justice, right? But we were so fragmented in our thinking and in our positions and in our personal opinions that we couldn't all get on board with it.
Right, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I do want to talk about umoja and unity and what that really means. We're going to talk about that in a second. Why is it that sometimes we may lose focus sometimes when we're dealing with each other?
I wanted to back up a little bit to something that's pressing on me, the slide before. Why the two females here?
Yes.
When
Was
the
it
two
before that?
females that he was accused forward one. Yes.
Yes.
Here. The two females he was accused of torturing.
Right.
Why was there no proof? Why weren't they believed? I have to address that. I mean, it's yeah.
Huh? What was the next slide?
Okay. Exes. We know how exes go. Yeah. I mean,
and I don't know the full story. I'm not completely familiar with it, but I know that there was some issues there, and whether it was totally true or not, or partially true, I don't really have a whole lot of information.
I gotta say, this at this time, you know, white America's biggest fear was this, was any sort of cohesiveness and conversation and, you know, monolithic in a dream, right? But divisiveness is best thing they have in their toolbox to this day, and we see it all around continuously. And I think that's why Black Lives Matter absolutely blew people's minds, because they didn't want us together. They don't want us talking. They don't want us to happen. And they were so busy with pro and all the government, pro FBI. They were busy in the front. They were busy, and they did it. They got the job done.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah, absolutely.
Insert people. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's run the questions then. Why one of the issues that people don't realize that we really put together, no one really addresses the demographics of the people that are united in what is common cause. So what is the common person? Because you're looking at, you know, the African American community, you're looking at people that have higher levels of degree of education, their principles and more socioeconomic groups that are wanting quality or access as well. And that usually is not addressed in a productive, positive, conversational way. It's more of an aggressive, or I have mine, it's yours kind of conversation. And the unfortunate effect of that is when we hear that we need to pull each other up, but for somewhere along that path, that's forgotten. And all of a sudden, you have this intervention outside, resources for people like, well, you have an education, you have a degree, but you are better than people that don't, which is a false narrative because everybody started at some point.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at what is the ultimate goal for all of us, it boils down to what is the ultimate goal for you. And I say that because I've been here in Jacksonville since 1999. And I, with Professor Rudy, involved in a lot of organizations, groups, laws, and stuff. But my issue is why only have it once a year? Why not have something each month? And even though that's talked about, it's rarely implemented. And you get this hype and you're all excited, but then it's like, oh, we're gonna wait till next year. By that time, so much has changed. Yeah. Instead of doing something, every month with collective needs, promote needs.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point because of very similar to what the sister said about how Black people are not monolithic, right? We're not all the same. And so we come from various ethnic groups and class groups. And some of us come from money, some of us don't, and some of us have formal education, some of us don't. And oftentimes, like the sister said, it gets used from outside. Those things are used to then divide us and keep us divided and say, oh, well, you have a degree, so you should be ahead, or well, you come from money, so you should be ahead, and we're going to put you here. And like you're saying, a lot of times, sometimes that causes us to become separated or look at this person as better, or why do you have this, as opposed to saying, what is the common goal? What is our ultimate goal? Regardless of where we come from, we can't control our origin. We can't control our privileges or our challenges. All we can do is say, well, this is the goal, and how do we bring the things that we want together to try to achieve this goal?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, again, back on the Kwanzaa program, that's about, about the torture of women. Seems like that false or true. He was convinced that these ladies were informants or had become informants to the government or the US organization. And this is always part of these paranoias that the Kwanzaa program created amongst Black organizations and within it, that leaders and stuff be paranoid about what the other group is doing, or whether they infiltrators in the organization, whenever they can find a split or a wedge, then they will put out informants in one group and then stir up trouble in the other group. They eventually will lead to the US organization and the Panthers, having a shootout on the UCLA campus. All these kinds of things toward, unity around, African. And the same is done with all the civil rights organizations, whether it be SNCC or NAACP or others, but just pitting one group against another. And the weaknesses of the leaders just couldn't get together to make sure they talk among themselves to make sure that they could be on some kind of accord where dissension would not creep into their midst. Absolutely. And this isn't the first time. This goes all the way back to Marcus Garvey and Du Bois. So yeah, and today we just have to continue to try to find ways to be better in some of the challenges that our ancestors faced. So for the rest of the class, we're going to do something a little different. Again, we're going to discuss together
the ideas and meanings and perspectives on the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. So the first one we talked about was umoja, which is unity. And the proverb for umoja is to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. That is the principle behind umoja. And this is the symbol for umoja. And the symbol comes from, the symbol is the Naginat symbol, and it is a Pan-African symbol of unity. And you see it in various African cultures. You see it amongst the Yoruba culture, the Hausa or the Hausa Fulani culture, the Bashango culture is the symbol of unity in African cultures. My question to you is, why do you think umoja is the first, umoja or unity is the first principle of Kwanzaa? Why do you think that was the intention? Oh, this is my nephew that asked me about about Kwanzaa that made me decide to kind of do this. So, what's up? What's up, Sam?
Why they maybe think umoja should be the first principle? Maybe it's the important one.
Yeah. My question is, why do you think umoja or unity is the first one? Why do you think that is the first one?
Because when people were in the civil rights movement, black and white people were separated.
Okay. So because there was separation, okay.
I think unity is the first one because you can't really celebrate a holiday by yourself. It's a holiday for everyone to celebrate. So you need to come together for everyone to celebrate.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I think it's the first principle because we've been talking about unity the whole time, and really they know once we get together we can break any chain. So that's why it's like even for decades we don't have people in the house or people on enslavement in the field. They know it just to break us apart. I feel like they've been programming us for so long so that when they do something to retaliate that our unity. That's why we stay inconsistent and get off track, things like that.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good point. The significance of our unity is how we've come to have many of the freedoms and much of the advancement that we have had when we can come together. It doesn't necessarily have to be everybody, right? Because Harriet Tubman couldn't get everybody, but she got enough of them, right? So everybody don't have to be on the same page, like you were saying, right? We don't all have to agree, but there has to be a significant number, right, to really make, if everybody didn't agree with Martin Luther King. Absolutely. Everybody didn't agree, but that didn't stop us from getting the Civil Rights Act passed. Correct. So you don't have to have everybody, but there needs to be a significant number to help advance forward. Yes.
So they think of families, there's unity in their community, but you each have your own separate celebration and family. It doesn't mean you're not united. You can have both.
Right.
You can stay in your home and celebrate, and you can stay in your home and celebrate, but I see a lot of unity in the Black community. I'm kind of about it.
Yeah.
I am. I'm kind of stunned. I didn't see it much up north. I'm moving down here, we all have a party, and I can't even believe how many relatives are in the room. That would be a bloodbath, if it doesn't have the love there. And I don't know, it's fascinating, and how it seems so many of my Black friends are in touch with their aunts and uncles and cousins, and I'm like, how do you do that? It's beautiful. It's incredible. It's big. It's bigger than I can get my head around. Absolutely. And so there's so much safety. Maybe you feel sometimes like there's disparity and all of it, or you're not. But I see a great connectedness. I see it in quiet nods. I see it everywhere publicly. I'm just. You guys got a private club. It's a good thing. It's a lot of safety there.
Let me add to that we have lost the extended family in the Black community to a large degree. And so that's a cause for the breakdown in unity, but there is still something there that we can build upon. And I say to all of my friends, let's get that back. You know what I mean? It's not that we have lost it. Yes, we have lost a major part of it, but it's still within our ability to get it back. The disunity of us, together is the assignment. Okay?
Read that book.
Okay?
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Because a lot of times, I think because we're so close to the issue, we can't really see, the unity in the talk. When we're just so in the face, we can't really see her from the outside, but we can, we're able to observe that and call us out on it and say, hey, this is what you have. We can't see what we have because we're so close to the issue.
Which, coming to these classes has answered a lot of kind of questions I had about like, how can you get together and you love to be together so much? Like simple things, like you're gonna have a family, you're gonna see your family. Well, it's not just mom and dad and it's like 50 of them. And I'm like, what the hell? Like how'd you do that? Like how do you keep those threads and that connection? And it's powerful. I mean, my family's splintered, I'm the oldest of 7, divorced, but there wasn't enough to keep us together, I guess. And also alcoholism. I mean, y'all have a history of us dumping all the drugs on you. And so sure, look what happened. This is what happened. There's an epidemic of addiction and alcohol, but I think your ties are epic. I think they're so long, they're generational. Even though there was that schism and that cutoff with slavery, there is a determination I see among most of my Black friends to keep the family, to be with the family. Anyway,
I'm glad you mentioned that determination, because that's the next principle we're going to talk about, which is Fuji Chakra and self-determination. So we're going to continue with that. Go ahead.
I think the young lady brought up a valid point about our culture and our heritage, because in multiple ways we all have some kind of connection. And when we're together, whether for a birthday party or a graduation or whatever, a lot of the conversations center around our resiliency of overcoming.
Yeah.
So we may have, like at a graduation, a young lady or a young man, maybe the first person in the family to go to college, or keeping up the tradition of going into the military, or something related to that. So that gives us an opportunity to share past experiences, future expectations, celebrations, and even warning of our past elders. And we look at it as we may not get together as much as possible, but when we get together, we capitalize on that opportunity to help each other and reconnect, so that we connect when we carry something away from, for each of us, when we get together. And that's important because we carry it for such a long time. It's our mental health opportunity to relieve stress and then apologize and make up.
Right. Is it possible for all Black people, in spite of how different we may be, whether it's ethnicity or education or background, to be unified?
Yes.
I think one of the things we have to start with forgiveness. We hold so much in ourselves from the past that has happened. We need to be able to forgive ourselves, but we need to be able to forgive our family members and our community. And once we really forgive each other of past transgressions or whatever, then we're able to form a united bond, because we leave that stuff behind us. We carry a lot of baggage with us. And that baggage sometimes is what sustains us, unfortunately. So we need to learn how to forgive each other and make that forgiveness permanent, so we can all move on collectively.
I didn't think about that. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes.
I think a main thing would be our shared history here. That's one of the main things Malcolm X teaches was how we have a shared history with each other, and knowledge itself produces love for self. And when you learn our history, you see how we've been treated, it's easier for you to be more empathetic to somebody who looks like you. So you stand up for another person that looks like you because you know we've been through the same thing.
I think that's important because that's one of the reasons why I think this class is important and having young people here is important. One of the first things I said when we started was the more we can see ourselves in each other, the less likely we are to want to fight each other. The less likely we are to want to kill each other. The less likely we are to want to hurt each other. Because when I see you, I see me.
Yeah.
So when we're unified, then that means I don't look at you as separate from myself, because that's how the Europeans got us in the first place. Because this village thought that they were so different from that village, and this ethnic group thought that they were so different from that ethnic group, so they sold this one in there. And the more we start to look at each other as why we may be different in, like you said, our families and different things like that, we have a shared history and shared consequences. If you hurt, I hurt. If something happened to your people, it happened to my people. So that in some way we have to find a way where there's a collective link, and then we might be less likely to hurt each other. Yes.
I would say communication is a big thing. Like we may see things like on TV and stuff, but there's a lot less mindset.
So having better communication
You know,
among
like the reason why, like we're seeing something emotional, like we don't know the reason why.
Yeah. So a lot of times we may hear something and want to react, and then just taking that extra step and say, well, I wonder why this, before I get mad or upset or I tweet this or whatever, let me try to take a step back and figure out why. And sometimes it's that just taking a step back can solve a lot of unresolved issues.
So we have to move on from the road.
So yeah, I'm getting ready to go to the next.
But I would like to piggyback on what the brother said about unity within yourself first. You have to be unified in yourself, in your community of self first, before you can seek it in anyone else. If you are disunified, you don't know who you are. How are you going to forgive anybody if you haven't forgiven yourself?
Yeah.
And the transgressions that have been heaped on you by family members, whether they're here or gone on to the next round, you need to deal with that within yourself. Then you can help your community.
Yeah. That's so important. We understanding who you are first, and then in your own family members, your own house. Get that together, and then get everything else outside of it together. So important. You mentioned determination. Kujichagulia is the second principle, self-determination. And self-determination means to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. That's the principle of self-determination. And it is, and this symbol, Ahenwa, is the Akon throne symbol of national identity, cultural groundedness, and rightful governance. And so Kujichagulia is part of the two varied traditions of resistance within African American history, right? Typically, you have this one pathway of resistance is the assimilationist tradition, right? Where there's a way in which we as Black people have been trying to assimilate and integrate into American society, get justice, get equal rights, be treated the same, right, as white people. And then there is the self-determination route, where Black people have said, we don't necessarily care about integrating or assimilating. We actually don't really want that. What we want is to be able to control ourselves. Just stop what you're doing and let us do for ourselves. Give us what you owe us, and then let us determine for ourselves what we can and cannot do for our people. And so it's these two paths of resistance that have been very consistent in African American history. And so that Coochie Chocolate, self-determination, is what that means. And so just wanted to ask you, what does it mean to you to define ourselves? And how have we wrongfully been defined in our history?
I think one thing it means is for you to look inside your own community for yourself. So often we have defined ourselves through the media, through what other outside people are saying about us, and we're taking it as fact. We're taking it as truth. But if you look inside your own family and your own community, we'll see what you see. You know, we won't be so apt to get our definition of Black people from the media, from the news, from other people outside of us, if we would just take the time to study ourselves and look at ourselves. And these classes are helping us to define our own history. I've learned so much from these classes, you know, until sometimes it will change your perspective, even though you've heard that all Black people are killers. You know, all Black people are drug dealers and drug users and all of this other stuff. That's because that's all you see on the news. That's all they show is us. And we don't even make up half of the population. So how could we be doing all the killing, all of this and all of that? So if you just think for yourself, thinking for ourselves is the one thing that we can do. And just looking in our own communities, at our own feelings and how we interact with each other as a family, like you were saying, and how when we come together, we uplift one another, that kind of thing. But we don't see the positive because there's just so much negativity about us, all around us.
To piggyback off what everyone's been saying, it started with a level of pride in ourselves. Teach them young because we do all the right things. But like she said, the media does teach us the negative about us. And then we, outside of being Black, and how your mind works. Like your mind always can do like this stuff, you want to start believing. So I feel like it does start with a level of pride.
Yeah, and continually, a lot of times if you're on social media and you put up a post or something, and you might have all these people say something positive, and then you might get that one negative comment. That's the one you're like, oh, why she had to say this about me, who she thinks she is, and you might skip all this positivity to fixate on that negative, right? But it's important for, and that might be a psychological, that might be like a psychology researcher might be able to explain, but for some reason as human beings, we may ignore the positive things that we may see about ourselves and hyperfixate on the little bit of negative that somebody else may do or show us. And we have to reprogram our minds to define ourselves based on the positive things that we see in our community and not the negative things that we are shown.
I'm going to speak on my community as a queer woman. You know, a lot of times in the news, especially right now in our political climate, you know, we're seen as mentally unwell, or we're this, we're that, our trans community, or predator. It's ridiculous. You know, it's the same thing that the media, the fear mongering, you know, has shown in the public. And so we've really had to come a long way recently at defining ourselves. Me, I'm just a grandma, you know, I'm getting my master's in human service. I'm just a woman, you know, so, you know, I think a lot of marginalized communities have the same battle. They don't want to see us as good members of society that contribute and human beings, you know. And as a Puerto Rican queer woman, I've faced a lot of bigotry and things like that. So it really isn't. And there's a lot of discourse within the LGBTQ plus community. You know, we don't do enough for this, or, you know, the bisexual women aren't doing enough for that. You know, so it's the same thing. It's at that division, you know, and right now, all marginalized communities really need to have that one voice. We really need to come together for each other, not just within our own community, just fighting for ourselves. Intersectionality tells us if one is battling, we are all battling, so yeah.
Absolutely.
I just want to say that when you were talking about social media, there'll be all these people will say, oh, that's wonderful, congratulations, you did a good job. Someone will say something negative, and it almost like opens the floodgates of hell in humanity. And people feel it's almost like they have permission now to be horrible. And I'm like, oh, I get so scared. I really don't even want to leave the house knowing y'all are out there being so mean. Like those posts are vicious. And I don't know, like, it makes you wonder, like, where is it human nature of that? Or is it all the people saying, good job, congratulations, whoa, you graduated, you got the job. And, I mean, it's scary. I find that really scary. The ugly.
I have been celebrating Kwanzaa since 1995 as a member of the Women Temple Baptist Church in Southeast Washington, D.C. To this day, I thank my pastor for teaching us to love our Black selves. Not because we're so different, but Blackness as defined by African culture. He taught us that after we got our African names, which spoke to who we saw in us, and that's how Africans name their children. They don't name their children out of their heads. They see you. They see an ancestor in you. They see your spirit. They see how you express yourself. And therefore, they give you a name. My name is Mayamino Adiro, which means expressive. So I have always spoken for myself. My cultural groundness is solid. My national identity is African American, and I carry that wherever I travel around the world. So that's my rightful governance of myself. And then I try to enlighten those who are coming after me and walking alongside me.
Yes, that leads me to this last question. What does it do for a person when they can speak for themselves? What does it do for a person? Right? Like, I'm gonna get to you, Seth, but this is my daughter. And even though I teach her and I tell her certain things and I rear her and do the things I'm supposed to do, oftentimes when we're talking, I may not agree, or she may not agree. I can say, you can speak for yourself. You can say how you feel. You say it respectfully, but speak for yourself. Or if somebody may ask me, oh, well, what does she want? I say, you can ask her. Right. And she can tell you what she wants. She's fine. And I say, or you tell them, use your voice. Speak for yourself. Speak up for yourself, because what does that do when you are allowed to do that? It empowers you. Right? That empowers you. That gives you power. Right? What else? I saw your hand, son. What does it do when you can speak for yourself?
It makes people happy because they don't have to talk to you because it makes them happy, because they're so excited that they don't have to talk for you, even though you for yourself.
Right, it gets people excited, right? Yes.
It lets you be able to, like, for people to understand that you have the confidence, to be yourself, and people can hear you out.
Yes, it gives you confidence to know, oh, I'm not silenced. I can speak, and I don't have to depend on somebody else to give me the words to tell me who I am or to tell me what I think. I can speak for myself. I have my own voice. So that's something, that is what self-determination, that's what Kujichagulia is all about, right? Define ourselves, speak for ourselves, create for ourselves, right? One more thing I want to say about that. This create for ourselves is very important, because whatever somebody else creates for us, they can take from us, right? That's what this class is all about.
Yep.
This class says, oh, you thought you made our history and you put it in our school so you can take it away. we're going to create a space where we talk about our history, and you can't take this away from us because we have our own voice, right? So when people create something for you, whether it's on a racial lens or on a gender lens, a man gave you something or a woman gave you something and you didn't give it to yourself, if you didn't create it for yourself, that means they have the power to take it from you. But when you create, you can keep it for as long as you want it. This is just a picture that I had of a Kwanzaa celebration at the Medgar Evers Community Center. So I just wanted to show that. Third principle is Ujima, collective work and responsibility. And the principle around that is to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems, and we solve those problems together. This is based off of the Okoma no Tasso, the Adikra symbol of shared effort and obligation. And so the first question around Ujima is, are we responsible for the people in our community? And why is it important to be responsible for the people in our community?
Because that's community. You know, if you don't look out for each other, you don't have a community. The definition is.
If your street is messy in your community, and everybody else helps you clean it up, and you don't clean it up, then when animals pass by, they're going to eat the food and get sick.
So that's why we have to be responsible for everything around us, right?
I think we should be responsible for the people in our community because, like the first one, we have to be united. So if we're united, we can also be responsible for the people, so it helps us like stay together for longer periods.
Anybody else? Collective work and responsibility.
So my definition of collective work and responsibility is to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our own. In the African tradition, no one is left behind.
Yes. In our tradition, nobody is left behind. Everything we do, we all do this together. There was a principle I heard that says, if you want to go fast, go what? Alone. If you want to go far, go what? Together. So if I want to get there fast, yeah, I can go by myself. But the further I go means I have my people with me. I have somebody helping me. We're going there together. And so collective work and responsibility just means that we are responsible for the people around us. We cannot be individualistic because as individuals, we can only go so far. But the more we work together, the more we are responsible for each other, the further we go. I saw you in that community.
So, comparing to what Jameer said, we have to be united to get the job done. My mom always says, if you want to do it faster, work together. And so if you want to work faster, you have to work together. You have to be united to work together.
That's right.
Good job. Good job. Good job.
All right, this kind of goes back to the first principle of unity.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be unity, then it includes everybody, and you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because when you see somebody else, as you said earlier, you see yourself. Or as Nino Brown said, am I my brother's keeper?
Yes. Yes.
That is if you saw New Jack City.
Right. No, but that's so true. And very similar to what the sister said about the Puerto Rican community or the queer community, and even when we start looking even outside of our community, right? Just because something is not happening directly to me or to my family, right, doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't, to some degree, be responsible.
That's right.
Right?
That's
Obviously, we can't. Me by myself can't save everybody. Or us by ourselves can't save everybody. But we can do what we can.
Yeah.
We can at least say, I'm not going to turn my head or turn my back. You can't give all your money to everybody, right? But you can do what you can to help others because we are responsible for each other.
You know, our organization, we go to Pride at the Capitol every year during legislation. When we went in March, there was about 500 of us. We didn't go there just to fight anti-LGBTQ bills. We fought anti-DEI bills. We fought a lot of bills that were targeting marginalized communities. Because as they say, when they come for one, they come for all, you know, and we really do need to look out for each other, you know.
Yeah. There has to be that balance of doing for ourselves, and then when we can and we look out for each other, we try to understand that our responsibility in our community, we have responsibility in our community, and we have to do what we can, and even at times we may align with others. Yeah.
Can I comment on who
Yeah. Not yet. We got one more, and then we're gonna go to Uja.
I'm trying to word it the right way. To not do one. I feel like we as Black people, part of our problem is we have not learned to build a community and get our stuff and ourselves before we start up.
That's
We
awesome.
usually left to pick up the pieces ourselves, not other things that add to the other. Outside of, you know, other races or other sexualities, we're Black first. So we need to make sure that that's our priority in our goal before we even try to look out. Yeah.
That's also a good
That's
point.
always been our downfall, is we're taught that we have to be the ones to help these outside, these other communities that they expect of us.
Sure, absolutely. That's a good point, because what do they always say on the airplane? You gotta do what?
Put your mask
You gotta
on.
put your mask on. You gotta make sure you're gonna stay alive first before you can try to help somebody else. So that's why there has to be a balance, right? It's not to say you can't look out for people elsewhere, or you can't look out for other groups, but you also have to, again, what you were talking about what is the priority, what is the objective, and everything is about balance. Everything. But you also have to make sure, okay, I gotta also make sure my people's straight, right? And then maybe I can align, or I can send money, or I can lend a voice or lend a hand here and there, and not at the expense of whatever my mission is, right? So that's very important. Yes, and then we'll go to Uja.
I wanted to quickly comment, you know, earlier we were talking about how all the political people were dividing up the Black Panthers and us and all of these different factions. And I saw that right here in this town in 2012 when the LGBT community was trying to go after updating the human rights ordinance. And city council sat down and said, if you'll take the transgender community out of this equation, we'll pass this for the lesbian and gays, but we won't pass it for transgender. And we said, no, we're not doing that. And I think that's the big thing here is if we start dividing and not getting everybody together and staying together on this, yeah, they'll give it to that group and they'll give it to that group and they'll keep trying to divide us so that we don't fight together. Because if we fight together, there's no stopping us.
Whatever community you're a part of, whatever group is very important. That unity and that collective responsibility is extremely important.
One of the things I wanted to mention is that we don't all have the same fight. We all have a fight. We do. All have a fight.
That's right.
We don't all have the same fight. And when the civil rights movement was passed, there were so many other things that came under that umbrella and freed so many other people. So I agree with this sister over here to say, get your act together as your community, and you would be surprised how many other things would come under that. You know, under that umbrella. When you're trying to fight it out there by yourself, it is hard. You know, but when I don't know, it's something about the Black community and government that just don't get. They've been fighting us for a long time. I mean, for a long time. And we just now hearing about the lesbians and gays and all of that. But this is, our fight has been going on forever. Forever. And for some reason, other people can get reparations. We can't. You know? So it's this fight. It's something about us. If we win this fight, when we win this fight that we have with the Black community and government, you will find that your issue, other people's issue, they will fold.
Right.
They will fold because the civil rights movement, it did something for every other people
Our fourth, Ujaman's cooperative economics, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. Right here is an example. This is probably the biggest example right here. This example right here is the infinity symbol of togetherness and family, two interlocking half circles. Why do you think this is part of the principles of Kwanzaa, the idea of building and maintaining our own stores and shops and businesses in our own economy and profiting from them together? Why is that so important?
Yeah, I just want to point out that, in historical sense, language-wise, Ujamaa doesn't mean cooperative economics.
Right, yes, no, that's true. It comes from Julius and Nyeri's idea. Right.
I mean, family good, but Dr. Ranga, translated family good as being, basis of social networking.
Right.
Therefore, through social networking, you can do distribution economically, trade and trust and the like. And so I think that that's why when people put it through the mob, they'll now see cooperative economics, which is probably, diminish the actual, family good. I think that, cooperative economics is important because my distribution of resources, but not just resources about money, but resources in terms of human resources, skills, ideas, concepts that are needed to build any community based on networking and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else? One of the most significant parts of the foundation of any nation, of any community, is what? What? Finances, economics, money. You need money, especially in the capitalist society. You need capital to build on.
And to have power.
And to have power. To get things accomplished, you got to have money. And not only do you have to be able to get money, but you also have to be able to what? Keep money in your community. Keep money circulating and keep profit circulating in your community. And that comes from us owning and building and maintaining our own commerce, our own stores, our own businesses, our own schools, our own everything, and then profiting from them together. If you have to go outside to ask for money, if you have to go outside of your community to ask for resources, if you always have to go outside to get it and then use that money to then help build, then who owns it? The person who lent you the money. The person who gave you the money, the people who gave you the money. That's why colonialism was so significant, and neo-colonialism has been so significant, because even after colonization technically was over, much of the money and much of the resources to many parts of those African colonies, although now they can call themselves their original names and this, that, and the third, much of their resources and power still come from European influence and European assistance. So even after they're so-called decolonized, they're really not. If we can't maintain our own selves financially, if we can't take care of ourselves and feed ourselves and clothe ourselves, then how much power do we really have? And this comes from having our own stores, having our own businesses, and then doing our best to maintain that, doing our best to support that. Sometimes I'm driving and I may be like, oh man, I'm in the mood for a smoothie, or I'm in the mood for this to eat. And I can pass the store and get ready to turn in, and I say, wait, Cafe Resistance is about 15 minutes up the road. I'm gonna just go ahead, I'm gonna go past all these other stores, and I'm gonna go to a black-owned store. I'm gonna pass all these other, even though it's more convenient to stop here or to stop there, or I'm gonna pass all of these, because it's not about convenience. It's about where this money goes. This money's gonna go to a black business. And this black business can put this money in another black bank. And that bank can give a loan to another black family and can buy a house in a black neighborhood. And the money just continues to stay among our people, which is what it used to do for a long period of time. it would circulate about 8 times, they said, in Black Wall Street before it left. And that's why Black Wall Street was so powerful. That's why they were so rich. That's why Black Wall Street was so wealthy, because the dollar circulated so many times. But the closer we get to modern day, the dollar starts to circulate from 8 to 6 to 4, and now it only stays in our community. I don't know how long would they say? One time, 1 hour or 6 hours, they say, before it leaves. And that's it. And so we have to be very cognizant of how and where we spend our money, because that cooperative economics is what's going to give us our economic base to maintain the power that we need in our communities, right? The sixth principle is NIA, purpose, to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. The hieroglyph Nefer is the ancient Egyptian symbol of beauty and good, and that is where this comes from, this notion of purpose. So some questions to help you kind of understand purpose, right, is what gives your life meaning? What gives your life meaning? What brings you joy? What gifts do you bring? How is life calling you? Why is purpose so important every single day when we wake up? Why is purpose important every single day when we wake up?
One thing that gives you a reason to wake up each morning.
Give you a reason to live. Whatever that may be. It might be your children, your child or your children. It might be your family. It might be whatever you feel like God put you on this earth for. Whatever your mission is. Whatever it is, finding your purpose in life gives you the fuel, and it gives you the gas to actually get up and move.
That's right.
Sometimes it can even keep you alive, because this life is hard sometimes. I have had times in my life where I'm like, I don't even want to be here. It's not worth it. But then I tap into a purpose, and I'm like, you know what? I need to be, this is even bigger than me, or bigger than what I'm going through right now. This is bigger than what I'm going through right now. And sometimes our purpose, our need, can keep us alive. You got your hand raised?
I am. I'm an elder, and at this season in my life, my kids are grown, my grandchildren are in college. So I asked my dad, what should my purpose be now? And he called me back into the classroom as a foster grandparent. So it's not that those kids live with me, but I go to them. I'm in the classroom, and I help build up those who are not reading on grade level, those who are struggling in math, and I minister to them.
Yeah.
So that brings me joy. That is the gift that I'm giving back to the next generation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my calling in life at this season in my life.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you make a really good point. Sometimes what might be our purpose in one season of our life, sometimes that purpose gets fulfilled, and then we may say, well, that was my purpose.
Yeah.
You say
Did
that.
you say math? Did you say math number?
I did. So in kindergarten, they learn math.
I missed all the classes.
So much pressure is put on the kindergartners to read,
I know.
their alphabet, write their name, count to 100. I mean, I'm just like overwhelmed. And these babies are just out of nursery.
Yeah.
But to advance to the first grade, you gotta know all that. So yeah. And this is much larger than me.
Yes,
The next generation is larger than me.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Over creativity, to do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. And this comes from the Dogon symbol of creativity, the 7 vibrations of divine creation. Creativity is extremely important because it is here both an original act and is an imitation of the creator. So every time we create, we reflect whoever we believe our creator to be. We reflect God. We reflect the ancestors. We reflect whatever is greater than us. every time we create, whether it's we're creating life, whether we give birth, right, or participate in the act of giving birth, right? Anytime we do this, anytime we create, anytime we have something or something comes out of us, whether it's a drawing, a painting, a book, a speech, a program, participating in education, anything that we do, we are reflecting God. We are reflecting whatever is greater than us, whatever is higher than us. And so when we talk about Kwanzaa and we talk about creativity, we're talking about restoring our people to their traditional greatness and leaving our communities more beneficial than how we found it. Anything that we do, anything that we create in the new year, we want to do it so that we leave our communities better than how we found it. Better than the communities that we inherited when we came into it. Whatever negative that we see, before we leave, we want to say, at least what I did something positive to leave it better than what I found. And so that's what Kwanzaa is all about. That in African times, each pharaoh, every time a pharaoh ascended to the throne, one of their purposes and every time they came onto the throne was to do something great for their people, to leave something, to create something and leave it so that when they passed away, they had something that they restored back to Ma'at. So every time they created something, it was a reaffirmation, it was a reestablishment of something good and something beautiful. So my question to you is, what kind of creativity have you seen in the Black community in 2025? What can you say that you saw that we create, maybe something personal or within your community or within the larger Black race that you saw that we created in 2025?
I would say, for example, like the young lady was saying, education live, here's a school called Coming to the Staff on Woodwood, and it exemplifies principles of HBCUs or conservative Black colleges and universities.
Yeah.
Students to see they have the ability and the capability to go on to higher education HBCU that nurture them individually but collectively as people of color. The school system itself lacks creativity to an egregious extent to where it doesn't promote creativity in the school system. And I can say that because I taught for 30 years. And just the idea when you look at schools, there are no art programs, there are no programs that exemplify music consistently, elementary, middle school, and some high school. And you look at creativity in essence, we all have some type of creativity, but it's incumbent upon each of us to find ways to express it and learn because the school system is unfortunately not. So you're going to see more charter schools come to our city in the future because now they have an opportunity to set their own curriculum and in some cases their own standards.
Yes.
So that is very important,
Creativity, absolutely. Yes, yes, ma'am.
I would say the dances that people create bring a lot of like unity within others.
Yeah, every time we TikTok dances, the dances that we create, the fun that we have, right? As people, any type of creativity. Our creativity don't always have to be serious, right? Any type of fun, music that we create, art that we create, it does something. And again, it's a reflection of who we are. It's a reflection of our blessings. It's a reflection of our thoughts and our ideas. All of these things are reflections, no problem. All of these things are a reflection of who we are, right? So being creative is a very significant part of us as we go into the new year. And lastly, Imani faith. To believe with all our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, in the righteousness and victory of our struggle. And this is symbolized by the ancient Egyptian double symbol of the Ankh. And the pillar serves here as the symbol of steadfastness and commitment to the the right, and what is beautiful in life. And so having faith in ourselves, having faith in our people is the last principle of Kwanzaa, and I would say is one of the most significant principles of Kwanzaa, because we can't do anything if we don't, number one, have faith in whatever it is that we believe in, our creator, our God, that energy and that idea that is bigger than us. And then not only have faith in that who gives us strength, but then having faith in our own selves personally and what we can do to help better ourselves in our community. And then we have to have faith in our people. We have to have faith in our people. Even when sometimes our people let us down. Even when we look and we see my brother, why you want to go with that? Sister, why what you want to do that for? But we have to, even after we get mad, we get angry, we have to sit back and say, you know what? We gotta have faith in our people. We gotta have faith in our struggle. I'm sure Malcolm X looked out and said, man, sometimes I don't even want to say that to these people no more. Because they keep messing up. I'm sure Ella Baker said the same thing. These sisters and these brothers keep doing. But I'm sure all of our leaders got frustrated with us. And if you're a parent or your parents, I'm sure have gotten frustrated with you. Your teachers have gotten frustrated with you. You've gotten frustrated with your kids and your grandkids. But we have to continue to have faith in our people if we want to see us progress. Yes.
I like how this is the last one, faith, and the first one is unity, because if we don't have faith, then we're not going to come together.
Yes.
Because faith is over fear. Like a lot of people, they might not come to this, or the new skating rink that just opened, and you know that's the new skating rink.
Yep.
They don't come there because like, oh, it's not good areas. But I mean, it's a local person, a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if we don't have faith over fear, then we're not going to come together.
That's a really good point. Having faith over fear. Sometimes we say, oh, we don't want to do something on the north side because this don't happen or that don't happen. Maybe. We don't know. It doesn't always happen, but we don't know. But we have to do the best we can. And we have to say, hey, I'm gonna have faith in this. Because sometimes things do happen in the way we want. And like you said, faith over fear. Having faith and believing in the best in ourselves and in our people and in what we believe in. Yes.
Yeah, I know you're trying to wrap up, but I want to thank you for your great presentation. I just have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I want to mention a book called Fighting for Us. Us as in capital U, small s, Dr. Reagan's organization, Us. And by Professor by the name of Dr. Scott Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And the book deals with the formulation of Kwanzaa and Us organization and its impact during the Black Power movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the book, one thing that's mentioned is that Dr. Reagan's organization, the Us organization, they want to be a vanguard, even as a small organization, to influence other organizations and their efforts. So I just kind of noted on my paper here, some of the things in the book that stated that the Us organization was influenced in two ways. One, promotion of black cultural studies at the dominant colleges during the late 1960s and 70s. Afrocentric thought, wearing afros, using Kiswahili in the United States as a cultural language. Sort of mentioned Kwanzaa itself, but also anything African-centered, African names. And I also wanted to know your shirt, the dashiki. One of the things also wearing African clothing, and that became a staple of cultural expression regarding African clothes, along with the African hairstyle. Yes. And natural hair as well. So these are all parts of what the Us organization was promoting and influence on other organizations and efforts that were promoting African culture emerging.
Anybody else?
Fighting for us.
There's also the idea that when us Kwanzaa is not a religious celebration,
Sure.
but it is a spiritual celebration. But all people are included. Sometimes you didn't leave it out. You did mention it a couple times, but a lot of people have this idea of it's only for African Americans,
getting ready to light the Kwanzaa candles, the Kinara today, because the lighting of the Kinara, again, talks about principles that we do apply in the African American community. But if you notice, you can be a part of any community. Any group can see these principles and apply this to who they are in their nation, in their group. They can apply these and use these to advance their agenda or their ideas or their principles, whoever you are, right? And so that's why I think this is such an amazing holiday, and that's why I wanted to take the time to kind of reflect on these things as we go into the new year. And so with that being said, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and light the candles of Kwanzaa. Can somebody get a video? Just do a video. So yeah. And so what we want to do is, what I'll do is I'll light the candle, and then you just repeat after me. You just repeat after me the principle for that day. So for the first day, first principle is umoja, unity. Thank you. And so Kujichagulia, self-determination.
Self-determination.
Ujima, collective work and responsibility.
Ujima, collective work and responsibility.
Ujama, cooperative economics.
Ujama, cooperative economics.
Nia, purpose.
Nia, purpose.
Kaumba, creativity.
Kaumba, creativity.
And Imani, faith.
Imani, faith.
And lastly, what I wanted to talk about was the colors of the candles. What colors do you see up here?
Red and green.
And the black, who knows what the black stands for? The color black on the black candle stands for the people. Black people, the people of African descent, Pan-Africanism, the unity of black people all over the world. The red stands for the blood that was shed during our transition from the continent throughout the diaspora and all over the world, the struggle that black people have gone through, and the blood that was shed, the blood that our ancestors have shed, and the blood that we shed today in the struggle for our freedom and for our liberation. And the green stands for the wealth, the greenery, the lushness, the grass, the beautifulness, and the life that comes from Africa and comes from our motherland and comes from our ancestral homeland. And so the red, the black, and the green are the Pan-African colors, and the red and the black and the green are the colors that we use to help symbolize who we are as black people, and this is what we celebrate during this time of Kwanzaa. Yes.
I have a quick comment, Brother William, and a quick comment for you.
Yes.
Okay, so when William was talking about the Kwanzaa, and include everyone, Dr. Garanga once said on an interview that even though Kwanzaa is directed at African people celebrating first fruits and building communities, but the principles of Kwanzaa have lessons for the world. The other thing I want to say is that Dr. Garanga mentioned at the beginning that we was talking about the version of Kwanzaa in the United States, Canada, and Caribbean. Now, some places on the continent, and I want to know that in South Africa, Kwanzaa is being celebrated, has been celebrated for about between 15 and 20 years.
Yeah.
And that one time on SABC News, South African broadcast company news, they were out at a Kwanzaa celebration in South Africa. And one of the organizers of the Kwanzaa celebration said, "We're so happy that Kwanzaa has revisited us." So the news reporter wanted to ask about that. So what do you mean that Kwanzaa revisited us? And the person pointed out that much of the beautifulness of Kwanzaa First fruit festival, and you had mentioned that they can be synthesized across the continent. The person mentioned that a lot of the ingredients of Kwanzaa are based in Southern Africa in the Kwanzaa festival, and that what they saw is the kernels of Kwanzaa going out into the diaspora, harvesting itself, and revisiting back into its origin. And the person said we were glad to see the holiday that one part in South Africa being germinated, children out there coming in to be revisited upon its home. I thought that was very significant.
What did you call it? The Kwanzaa festival?
The Kwanzaa festival. I had a plate on that. Kwanzaa festival. That's one of the festivals near Swaziland on East Swahili now, it's called, and also South Africa included in that as well. Like that's one of the festivals, first fruit festival that Dr. Karanga looked at along with when Egypt and Ghana and stuff like that. That this particular person who was organized the Kwanzaa festival in South Africa would make reference.
Absolutely. So I want to say thank you all for being here. Happy New Year. And we look forward to having a prosperous and happy and celebratory New Year in 2026. As always, these are some of the references if you're interested in learning more about the topic. Also, if you want to donate to Ashe Institute and his class as we continue to grow, thank you so much. And love you all. Happy New Year. Thank you. Oh, and as part of cooperative economics, please buy something from the store. And please make sure that you sign your name on the sign-in sheet so that you can get emails about the next class.
I'll at least every once in a while I get the face of other people and at least that I know. Right. Yeah. Why don't we
I'm gonna get something to eat. I should have got it a minute ago when I wanted to. It's raining there. That's contagious. This is getting the bed.
Right. Yeah, so what I just like to tell everybody.
My body pillow.
Do they normally have all those tables for outside in here, or how does
Let's see them blow out candles.
Oh, girl. I was about to take off running.
That chili's good.
It's so good. I think some hot sauce. Other than that,
It
it's
could go, it could go.
Texas beef. Texas beef. It's so good. They don't have cornbread recently. But the cornbread. I love cornbread.
She was telling me about it outside. I was like, I wish I
Don't tell me about it if you ain't got it. That's because of Ingrid and cornbread.
But she meant like spirited, happy, and bubbly. And I was like,
Excuse me. Don't you breathe my air out.
When she told me that, I was like, well, that
I
was
was like, no, she's not.
and I was like, that's not, I was like, that would make me take a seat. I was like,
That is hilarious.
I looked at her like,
That's something I've never been accused of.
I would,
I'm a little proud of you.
first off, with my totally